Hey guys and gals, welcome back to the Wild Courage podcast. Today, I have the honor of sitting down virtually with Stephanie Avent, and this has been in the works for a while. So thank you, Stephanie, for jumping on here with me today.
Of course, Jeremy. I am so honored to be here. So honored.
Yeah. So Stephanie lives in Texas, kind of outside of Fort Worth, which is kind of outside of Weatherford. But you're closest to Mineral Wells, right? Mineral
Correct.
Wells, Texas.
Correct.
So I know Stephanie through her husband, Tyler, who has been on the podcast. And I encourage anyone to go back and listen to Tyler's story. And we met, you and I met actually the same time that I met Tyler and Elko,
Right. Right. At the
right?
poetry gathering.
Yep, yep. Tyler and I were on a panel um, that Justin and Nicole did about mental health and addiction in the cowboy community, the Outside Circle show. And that's where we first met and got to spend a little bit of time together. And
Yes,
then Tyler has kind of jumped on board with Wild Courage and Hosts of Fire and has been to a couple retreats and I believe is coming to our fall retreat, which is like a month away.
he is. He is. And actually, my brother-in-law is also going too. So they're both going to go together. So that's super
Oh,
exciting.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So shameless plug, you guys, the retreat is coming up the second week in November, and it's almost full. So if you're interested, go to our website, go to events, and check that out. But enough about that. So I say this all the time, but I love my favorite part about doing this podcast is getting to know someone because it's amazing how well you can be in proximity of someone, even though we're not in that much proximity, but not even really know them. And
Right.
so I'm excited today to get to know you. I know bits and pieces, obviously, because I've got to spend time with you and your house in Texas and with your beautiful family. And but
Yeah.
so there's a lot of, so this is going to be you filling in the blanks for me today of all the
You bet.
things I don't know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
were you born in New Mexico?
I was born in Ruidoso, New Mexico. My parents at the time lived in Capitan, New Mexico. That's where my mom's family's from. So yeah, I was born in Ruidoso, and at the time, my parents, my dad was working for a propane company, and my parents were actually 19 when I was born. Uh,
Oh yeah, young.
and I have an older sister who, she was, my parents were actually 15 whenever they got married and got pregnant with my oldest sister. So then had
Oh
me
wow.
by 19. Uh, yeah. So, and then shortly after I was born, I think it was about a year after, uh, my great grandfather actually got cancer, and my dad moved up to Clayton, New Mexico, to help take over the family ranch up there, along with my grandmother. So then we moved to Clayton. So pretty much been a New
So you,
Mexican all my life up until now.
how old were you when you moved to the ranch?
I was about a year old.
Oh, okay. So you grew up on a ranch. That's all
For
you.
for the most part, I'll say I grew up rurally, because we had some things happen and we ended up moving a little bit closer to town when I was about 8 or 9 or so. But we lived on about 60 acres, a couple miles outside of town after that.
So did you get to grow up riding and doing some ranch work and stuff like that?
I did, I did. I spent the early part of my childhood riding in a feed pickup, caking cows and helping my dad tag and doctor calves, and then after we moved from the ranch, my first stepmother, she actually was a barrel racer, and so we always had horses and a couple cattle around and things like that. So
So at how old were you when obviously your parents got divorced?
I was 3 when my parents got divorced. Uh, we
So
lived out
do you have
on
any,
oh, I'm
go ahead.
we lived out on the ranch at the time, and my mom worked in town on Wednesdays actually at the sale bar, and around that time she started seeing someone else, and so not long after that they got divorced. And I say this story because um, I want people to know that it has a lot to factor in with the rest of my story. I don't say it to shame
Sure.
my mother by saying that at
Of
all.
course.
I
Of
give her
course.
a ton of grace because they were babies raising babies at that point. But
Oh my gosh.
uh,
Yeah.
it wasn't. I think they were around their in the early 20s when they got divorced for sure. And uh, we stayed on the ranch after that. My sister and I actually stayed with my dad, and my mom left and moved back to Captain to her parents. Um,
Oh wow. That's kind of unique
it is.
because I mean historically I think the kids, especially daughters, would go with the mom.
Yes, and that was definitely unique for our situation. My dad took over full force. I mean, he had 2 little girls to brush their hair and put in ponytails and get on the school bus.
Wow.
The ranch was 45 miles from town. Um, so when I was 4, I started preschool, and my sister's 3.5 years older than me, so we'd get on the bus and we'd ride. It would take us about 2.5 hours just to get to town, picking up all the other kids.
Mm,
So
yeah,
yeah, it
that
was a
is
lot.
rural.
Yeah, it was a lot for my dad, having to pack lunches and put hair in ponytails and everything else, but he
Oh,
did it.
my kids are older and my wife leaves to go to a horse show for the weekend and it's like I don't know where anything's at. I don't know which way to comb their hair.
Yeah,
They're like, "Dad, you're combing it the wrong way." I'm like lost when she's gone. So I appreciate that the fact that your dad had to step into both of those roles. Also, probably, I mean, I don't know all the circumstances, but probably heartbroken at the same time.
very much so.
Um,
Very much so.
yeah,
My dad, he grew up with a lot of trauma in his family, and so I think it's always been his thing in life is to have a family and create what he
mm,
didn't ever grow up with. And
sure.
so, I mean, he always was full force into to raising us. So, yeah.
And how old were you when your dad got remarried?
I was around 8 when they got remarried, or when he got remarried, but my first stepmother, he actually met her I think a couple years after my mom left, and she went ahead and moved in with us. And uh, not long after she moved in, my oldest sister decided that she didn't want to live with my dad anymore. She
Mm,
really was having trouble with another, another woman being in the house and everything. So
sure.
um, about that time, she asked my dad to go ahead and move back to Captain and live with my mom. And being that I was only 6 or 7, um, and they didn't want to split us up, they went ahead and told us we both had to go.
Oh, were you heartbroken?
I was a little bit, but at the same time, I didn't want to be without my sister. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
That was
so
the
we
one constant thing.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. So we ended up moving to Captain, and then right as the time we were moving to Capitan, that's whenever my family ended up having a lawsuit against each other for the ranch, and so not long after
Like
that, we actually
like
lost the ranch.
your aunts and uncles.
Yeah, my grandmother and her siblings actually my great grandfather passed away from the cancer not long after we had moved there, and my grandmother was the one kind of taking care of everything as far as uh, I mean,
The
she was,
ranch.
yeah, my dad ran everything, but she was there. And
Yeah.
there was some conflict with some things. And so they ended up, it got tied up in lawsuits, and we ended up losing the entire thing. not to
Because that,
family either. We ended up having to sell it just to pay for all the lawyer fees and everything else. So
oh, geez, that's
yeah,
heartbreaking.
it was it was a pretty rough time for everyone, I think, around that time. And so we were living with my mom, and my mom actually remarried also. Um, and my stepdad today, he's a great guy, and so that was definitely a highlight to have another wonderful father figure in my life.
Yeah,
Um,
because that can go either way.
yeah, yeah.
How did you get along with your stepmom? What was
Um,
that dynamic relationship like?
you know, for me, it was okay because I was so little, and I think I
Yeah,
was needing uh, that nurturing character in my life. I mean, I had my dad, but you as a little girl, you need kind of that womanly influence around. And so, I mean,
sure.
she was she was definitely the woman that taught me how to tie my shoes, and she'd pick me up from preschool, and I'd hang out with her when I wasn't with my dad on the ranch. Or my dad also owned a semi that he during harvest season he would haul silage, and so I spent a lot of time in a semi growing up
With
too.
her.
But with her, I got along with her pretty well in the beginning. But my oldest sister and they really butted heads, and because my older sister knew kind of the dynamic of what was going on. Um, I, it was just she was very open about things that she probably shouldn't have been with children.
Mm, yeah,
Um, was very expressive with her sexuality and things like that. And as young girls, I mean, I didn't really understand it at the time, but my older sister did, and so um, that was kind of tough. And
yeah, I bet.
yeah, yeah.
How long was your dad married to her?
Um, well, so let me let me share this part of it. So I stayed in Captain until I was probably 11. And at that time, she actually got pregnant with um, my littlest sister. My mom also has a daughter with my stepdad, but my littlest sister with my stepmom and my dad. And around that time, I started having some conflicts with my mother, and I decided that I wanted to move back with my dad. And my oldest sister did not, so I ended up moving back to Clayton to live with my dad and my stepmom at that time, and especially to be there because another sister and things
Yeah.
like that. So um, and a couple years after that, they ended up getting divorced. My stepmom ended up uh, seeing someone else.
Oh,
So
geez,
once
your
again,
dad.
my dad was left, with his daughter, and and that was about it. you know. So
So it
she
was
took
just the two of you?
yeah, she took my little sister with her, and it was just the two of us for about a year. Um, and I was starting high school, and around that time, he was really having a rough time. Um, Again, another thing that shaped kind of my childhood was my dad. He's been an alcoholic um,
Mm,
pretty much ever since my mom left. Uh, and so after my stepmom left, things his drinking didn't. I wouldn't say it got worse, but it was just it's harder whenever it's just the one parent there. Um, Not that he wasn't 100% hardworking, functioning,
sure.
you know, awesome dad, but it was harder because here I am going to high school, and yeah. So, anyways, I ended up moving back with my mom, and that
Oh,
only
geez.
lasted a year. So I only spent my sophomore year with my mom. Um, we were really butting heads, and I was missing my dad, so I ended up moving back to my dad's and finishing out my high school career there in Clayton.
Did your dad remarry while you were, I guess, since then?
he actually remarried my senior year of high school. Yeah.
Wow,
And he,
that's a lot of change in a very short amount of time.
yeah, 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 it was. And my mom and stepdad actually, um, in between all this time, they actually had gotten divorced and remarried as well. So there was a lot of conflict throughout my childhood and inconsistency of it.
Yeah, that's when I think about like knowing what we know now, right? At whatever capacity that is, you don't know when it's going on, the effects and the way that it's shaping you. And I just remember like hearing your story about, because my parents divorced
Right.
and the summers, I'd go spend a month with my mom and then every other holiday or something. And just the bellyache I would get like a week out from that transition of knowing that I was going to miss my dad, but excited to see my mom. And then a few days before I would leave, just remember how much I would start knowing I was going to miss my mom. But yeah, you don't know what to do with those emotions when you're little. And also, I think that there's something about watching your parents go through heartache that we don't know what to do with that. We don't know. We want to console. We want to act better, act right, because we know that they're going through a lot of heartache. And it's fascinating how that shapes us.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, now that I'm older, I realize a lot of things that were, due to my sympathies for my parents or, like that anxiety of feeling like, oh gosh, we're getting closer to the drop off point, you know, here we go. Because I mean, we would always meet at the same place. We'd meet halfway, which is like halfway the state of New Mexico, because one was south and one was north. And so once you got to that closest town and it was almost to that drop off, that feeling in your gut of knowing, like, okay, here we go. And, you know, I'm going to have to watch my mom cry, and then I'm going to have to watch my dad cry, and then, all of that emotion that comes with it.
Yeah, man, this takes me back. We always had a drop off at the same place halfway also, in this little town in Idaho called Bliss. And it was always at the same little truck stop. And I don't know, and probably 7 or 8 years ago, I had a dream that I was in one of those big wrecking ball things that they tear buildings down with at that truck stop. And I had
Wow.
a dream that I was this little boy and I was demolishing this truck stop. And it just was interesting that that truck stop um, represented so much turmoil and pain of exactly what you said, like just crying
Yeah.
as I'm running from one parent to the other, excited and heartbroken at the same time, and not having any idea what to do with those kind of conflicting emotions.
Yeah.
Do you think that created some like people pleasing um, attributes to how you showed up the rest of like how that shaped you moving forward in life?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And I think it's not only people pleasing, but a little codependency from it as well. Um,
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
that's
because yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I didn't even know what the word codependency was until a
Oh,
couple years ago. But after I learned it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's 100% me. Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's crazy looking back now at how those life events and childhood things shape us to our future relationships, right? And it's like, oh, that's why I show up this way.
Yeah.
That's why. And it's like weird because it's really hard to separate the baby from the bathwater. Like partly if I wasn't raised the way that I was and went through the things that I went through, I had to be a good people person. I had to make friends quickly because I moved schools every year or every year and a half, right? So when you're moving a lot and transitioning back and forth, it's like you get good at stuffing emotions and people pleasing. And I think for me, it was like I got really good at making friends fast. So like that's not a bad thing.
No, not
It's
at
like,
all.
but separating out like the hard parts of that and why we show up in the codependency, in the people pleasing, and a lot of that is just abandoning ourselves because we're trying to regulate our nervous system all the time. It's like, well, if I can make that person happy, maybe if I can help dad not feel so lonely and so bad, but then that turns into some performance also, right? Of like, I got to be good. There's so much turmoil and chaos going on in my family units that's shattered. It's either I see kids either go one way or the other, right? It's like they're rebelling because they hurt so much, and then other kids like really toe the line and really want to be the peacemaker and try to soothe and figure out a way to make mom or dad feel better. Do you find that to be true? And if so, which one of those routes did you go?
Well, it's really funny you say that because I tended to be more of the reserved, shy, quiet kid because I would make friends and then leave, and then I would be hurt because I didn't have those friends and I had to start all over. So I got to where I was just the quiet one, which I've always been kind of a quiet person anyways, but I would just keep to myself because it was easier than having to deal with other people's reactions of what's going to come out of my mouth. How are they going to react to whatever comes out of my mouth? Is it going to be good, bad? I don't know. So it's just easier to be quiet for me. And as I got into my teenage years, I put a front up of I'm this really good girl. I get straight A's. I'm the president of my FFA chapter. I do all the things. But then when nobody's looking, I'm going to go rebel.
Oh,
I
really? You had a secret agent life going on.
yes, yes.
What does rebel mean? What did rebel mean to you?
Well, my oldest sister was always kind of a little bit of an influence on me because she was definitely the rebellious one. She went and she's always been more outgoing, rebellious. So that had a little bit of effect on me because she started drinking in high school, and of course when she's in high school, I'm in middle school. So then I would drink with her and whenever I was around her at home, at my mom's house, or things like that. But then whenever I got into high school and I was all my on my own, it was, yeah, let's go drink, let's find somebody to buy us some beer and let's go cruise town, and then uh boys were, I always had a boyfriend or something like that, but then I'd be talking to other people, behind these guys' backs, and they had no idea, and which was super hypocritical of me because I was so angry at my mom and my stepmom, but here I am repeating their behaviors because I'm
Yes.
so angry. I want to be bad for some reason, and it almost was a really hypocritical thing for me to do, but at the same time, I was hurting so much, I think.
Yeah, and that's a really good point because it's like part of you wanted to be this good, not make any trouble, not create any waves, but inside it's like, what do you do with that pain?
Yeah,
And you can only hide it from everyone for so long, I think. It's just trying to find a way out, right?
yeah,
And also I think it is probably normal. I think it's what's modeled to us is how we show up to life and how we make choices and decisions. And it's like the conflict really is that thing that I hate so much. I hate that my mom cheated on my dad. I hate that I hate that there's so much unhealthy relationships in my family, and I don't want that. But at the same time, it's like the thing that we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's my junior year of high school. That's when my dad met my current stepmother, and we ended up They ended up buying a place and moving to a different house. So there was a little like, okay, now we have a little more um, unsettledness happening, and a new person is going to soon be moving into our home again. And I think my junior year of high school, I just kind of really went wild, but still maintain that front of, oh no, I'm a good girl. I get straight A's and I'm a good girl. But
Yeah,
uh,
you could check all the good girl boxes, but inside it's dealing with that pain of,
yeah,
I'm going to go do what I want over here,
yeah. And
which,
I had a lot of time to be alone, because my dad, he was driving the truck full time, and sometimes he would leave at night just to get halfway to his destination and just kind of keep ahead. And so here I am, 17-year-old girl left at home. What's she gonna do? She's gonna sneak out and she's gonna go drink and she's gonna go be with her friends and do whatever she wants. And uh, yeah, and they never had any idea.
there's also some dynamic to going back a little bit to something you said. When it's just you and your dad, it's one way. And I remember this feeling because my dad got married a pile of times of like, wait, who's this stranger that's coming into our space, and how unnerving and unsettling that is, even if they're not a bad person. But I think when you're younger, it's just like we just need stability. We just need to know that it's going to be okay. And when there's different people moving in and then someone leaving, and it's like, do I get attached to this one? Is this the
Exactly.
one that I get and at that age, when you're a teenager, it's like we're just guarding our hearts. We're like, why would I want to be try this again? That hurt last time. Because you do get ties with like your first stepmom just based out of proximity and longevity.
Hmm.
And then when that's gone, it's like, oh, here we go again. I don't know that I want to put a lot into this. And of course, this is all subconscious.
Right. Exactly. And it's not until actually the last couple of years that I've realized kind of my view towards women. I mean, which is crazy because I'm a woman myself, but it's a little disoriented because I have these feelings of abandonment. And it's crazy coming from a woman myself saying that I don't trust other women. Um,
Hmm.
and it's shaped how I've made friends later on in life. Yeah, it's that when my current stepmother moved in, I wasn't sure what to expect. Is she gonna leave too? Is she gonna abandon me too? Even at a 17-year-old who should be the last care in the world, subconsciously that's what I was going through.
For sure. So you finished high school. What you spoke a little bit about your junior year. What was your last year of high school like? Was it wide open too, or
It started that way, and then I met someone who was about 8 years older than me, that lived in town. He was working for a cutting horse trainer not far away. He had a home, he had cattle, he had um, all the time in the world, and so he took a liking to me, and because of kind of the state I was in at home, it was safe, it was comfortable, and so I ended up dating this guy my senior year, uh, and I
like openly,
I did, yes, I
like everyone knew?
Yeah, because I actually turned 18 September of my senior year. So I was
Oh,
18.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I went to my dad and I told him, my dad knew the guy, and I told him that he was interested in me and I'd really like to start dating him. And he, I think he definitely had his hesitations, but he told me I was 18 and as long as I followed the rules under his house, that was okay. So, uh, and right about the same time, my dad got married, and we were living in this new house under kind of different new rules because now we've added a new person to our family, and things change a little bit, and there ended up being quite a few conflicts. Um, I was able to stay in the house with them up until I graduated, and as soon as I graduated, I moved out and moved in with my dad. And uh, I actually graduated salutatorian of my class, so I had pretty much a full ride scholarship to New Mexico State University uh, to go be on their horse stitching team, and I had tons of scholarships. And I went to the orientation. The guy I was dating actually let me and my dad borrow his newer pickup because everything we had was kind of older and we had to drive 8 hours. So we borrowed this guy's pickup and we went down there. I did my orientation and got home, and within a week I had unenrolled and decided to go to a college closer to home so that I could be closer to him. So
That
I
makes sense.
so I ended up actually losing my in-state tuition scholarship, and I went to WT, West Texas University, instead in Canyon because it was only 2 hours away. Um, and this guy, he was absolutely uh, he doted on me. He he helped me buy my first pickup, co-signed with me for my first new pickup, I should say. Um, and uh, around my college years, that's when things started to kind of change. He asked me after halfway through my semester if I would quit college and come home. Uh, Even though he had helped me get an apartment in Amarillo so that he could come and stay with me, but he only came one time the entire time I had this apartment. So I missed out on all these opportunities in college, to go and have a dorm and have friends and everything else, because I was coming home every single weekend just so that I could be home and help him take care of things and be there. And not that it's 100% his fault. I mean, it's my fault too for going along with it. But I did end up
Sure.
quitting college my first semester. So I just pretty much went and blew all of my scholarships that I had and anything that I had set aside for college, and just came home.
Do And I just want to hear this from like you're a woman's perspective and that father-daughter relationship. And again, this is all in hindsight and the advantage of hindsight, right? Because when you're going through it and you're that young, it's so subconscious. But did you feel like, even though your relationship with your dad was like pretty good, sounds like, I mean, I know there's bumps here and there, but did the thought of like safety and security with this guy and you clinging on to, we spoke a little bit earlier about like codependency. It was like, did this guy feel like a rescuer out of your kind of rough childhood and life up to that point?
Oh, 100%. And it doesn't help that he had a family that was absolutely wonderful. His mother treated me like I was, her own,
Yeah.
and so it was like, yeah, this has been a saving grace to me. Why would I not come home and be here, And so I just completely abandoned any of my hopes and
You're,
dreams for someone else's.
yeah, yeah. That I feel like that's just probably such a common theme with someone who's been through as much as you'd been through up to that point of like, wait, there's some sort of safety and security here, especially again with the power of hindsight. Like you were probably so drawn to his family dynamic and unit and the stability of all of that. So it was like the whole package, right?
Yeah, yeah. And not only that, it was, you know, we had horses, we had cattle, we had, you know, we had things to do, and it was exciting, and and it was kind of like, okay, I can go play house and create my own family. Kind of that same thing that my dad had done, growing up with, let's just create our own safety and our own family and we'll be okay. Our own
Yeah.
protection. Uh, so I came home and uh, I did start trying to continue to get some sort of college degree online. Um, and I worked at a hotel in town as the night auditor and just some random things. Uh, and I actually ended up I should back up. All through high school, I worked at a bank in town for my uncle. Uh, I'm I'm like a fifth generation um, banker in the banking industry in Clayton because
Oh, okay.
my great grandfather, well, my great grandfather, my great grandfather, my grandfather, and then my uncle all have worked in banking in Clayton, New Mexico. So, um, all through high school, I worked at the bank as a teller and in operations and things like that. So it was it took me a couple years to shake the shame off of, I didn't go to college and fulfill my dreams and everything. And I didn't want to go sit at a desk at a town that everybody knew me and
Sure.
have to explain to them why I'm not in college and why I didn't, you know, finish out what I had been sent off to do. But a, about a year or two later, finally, I just realized that I needed to go have some sort of financial stability and have a job. So I ended up asking my uncle if I could come back to work, and so he put me to work in the accounting department at the bank after that. So, um, yeah, which was
And
a saving grace at the time.
yeah, soft landing spot for sure.
Yeah,
Um, how was your relationship going? So how long at this point? You guys have been together for a few years then, right?
we had, and that's why I say the bank was a saving grace because about that time, I realized just how far in debt this person was, and how it was just a lot of irresponsible stuff that was happening, and he was fixing to lose a house, and uh, it just things were not going good financially, and then our relationship started getting a little rockier because here I am expecting a ring at some point. I've just given up
Yeah, you gave up your
my
life for
dream,
this guy.
and
Yeah,
yeah, here I am cooking your meals and cleaning your house and doing your laundry and helping you pay your bills, and you know nothing. There's nothing, and we had been kind of going to church off and on, but he grew up fairly religious, and the ranch that we were on was actually his grandparents, and they were very religious, and our relationship started kind of getting rocky because he would tell me things like that he wished I would continue my Christianity and my journey, my walk with God, and things like that, and I was just at a place where I was I, I was just very lost,
did
and
you grow up in going to church at all? So
not at
you had
all.
no
My dad's family are Catholic, but my dad never uh,
practiced.
never did. Yeah, and then as a kid, when I was at my mom's, there was a little church there in town that would do vacation Bible school in the summers when I was
Mm,
there, and so sometimes I would go to that. but I would go by myself. Um, but other than that, I really had no relationship with the Lord, nothing at all. And so for him to come in and tell me, that I need to work on this, it was just a huge hit to my ego, huge. Um, and uh, within the last year of our relationship, he started pulling away, and I was just fighting tooth and nail to keep him and get him to propose to me or something, because I just didn't want everything I had done to be for nothing, you
Yeah.
know. And
Especially the weight of like you giving up your dreams for the idea of this stable, healthy relationship, and then basically an ultimatum.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
and so he kind of just kept stringing me along. He actually, and it was almost like I couldn't. He was giving me subliminal messages of, this probably needs to be over, and I never would really catch on. But his grandfather ended up passing away, and his grandmother was living in a home by herself. And so he said, maybe we should move in with her for a little while, just to help her out, because she was kind of in bad health, and we were kind of needing to rent out a house to get some extra income. And so we ended up moving in with her, and not long after that, he ended up starting to stay at another house that was on the property. And so it was just me and his grandma there together. And I didn't really catch on of like, wait, this is kind of strange. Like, why are you not staying here anymore? So finally, I was kind of like, okay, I think we need to put this to an end, which I had no idea what I was going to do, where I was going to go, because I didn't want to move back in with my dad. I didn't want, I was really lost. I mean, I was 21 and I just had no idea what I was doing with my life. So I ended up breaking it off with him. He told me I could stay um, with his grandma for a little while as long as I needed to, to
How
finally,
kind.
yeah, yeah. Which she ended up, unfortunately, she ended up falling and needing to be moved into a home anyway. So I ended up staying in the house by myself for like a month or something. And yeah, I ended up living in a camper at my dad's house for a while until I could finally find a place to rent. So I finally found a place to rent in town, and I was still working at the bank. I was continuing my education. The bank, it was a blessing because they would help me with my education at the time and everything. So yeah, about the time I got all that sorted out, that's when I met Tyler.
Oh, so how long, when you broke up with the other guy, how long until you met Tyler?
Well, it's it was actually a few months after I broke up with this guy. I was in the middle of trying to get a house rented and everything about the time that I met Tyler. Which is interesting, which he kind of told a little bit of our story, I think, on his podcast. But I had a friend that I had made in Clayton that had been telling me for a little while, even before I broke up with this guy, that about this really handy guy that she's known ever since she was a kid, and how he went to propose to this girl and she denied him, and now he's single. And man, if I were just single, it would be so great because we would just mesh so well together. And ironically, I was working at the bank, and one of my friends that just sat right around the corner from where my desk was, that was her nephew. And these girls don't know each other at all.
Oh, wow.
But she was at the same time telling me about her nephew who just proposed to this girl and it didn't work out. And now he's really heartbroken and, all this. So a couple months go by, and here's me over here heartbroken and alone. And here's him over here heartbroken alone. And both of them at the same time were like, you've got to meet this guy. So finally I decided, okay, it's time to meet him. So they encouraged him to add me as a friend on Facebook and, all of that. And so from there it just continued on until we finally decided to meet each other in person.
Man, that you guys were both each other's rebounds. And look how that turned out.
Yes.
Well, it's been great having you. That's an amazing Cinderella story. I know that everything's been perfectly peachy
Yeah,
since
see?
then, so that's kind of the end of
Yeah.
your story.
Yeah, if we want to stop right there, that might, yeah, okay.
Yeah, this handsome cowboy swept you off your feet and you rode off into the sunset.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what happened. This is just where it gets good.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
So
so,
when you first went out and like met in person, were you like, oh wow, there might be something here, or were you just so just open to whatever because your heart broke, or what was your initial feelings?
well, it's kind of interesting because at the time he was working for T-Cross in Pueblo. He was riding colts for his dad, working at T-Cross in Pueblo, T-Cross ranches, and so if anybody knows what it's like to be a horse trainer, you have no time to go anywhere, do anything. So it was like, yeah, we need to meet, but I have no time. So I decided I would drive to Pueblo and meet him if he could take the time off to at least come to town and eat dinner. So I did. I ended up driving up there and meeting him, and from that moment it was kind of like, yeah, okay, there's something here. It, I mean, yeah, I'd like to take the time to
Get to
heal
know
and
him.
but at the same time, like there's definitely something here.
How long did you guys do that while he was in Pueblo?
So he actually stayed there for a couple more months, and then he ended up getting a job uh, to go work on a yearling operation in Santa Rosa, New Mexico. One of his best friends that he grew up with offered him a job there, and because it was in New Mexico, I mean, it was about the same distance from Clayton to Pueblo as it was from Clayton to Santa Rosa, but he ended up taking that job, and so I actually then would drive back and forth to Santa Rosa, or he'd drive to Clayton, um, and that was for, oh gosh, a year and a half probably.
So you guys did the long distance thing for,
Mhm.
which might have been good, right?
It was.
After coming out of living with someone and going through all of that.
Yes, yes. That year and a half that I had to have kind of my own little house and have my own time and space and kind of heal and everything was, yeah, it was a precious time for sure.
So after a year and a half, was it like, were you guys talking about marriage?
We had been on and off. That was his openly wild days, we'll call them. I mean, he was always wild from the moment I met him, and I knew that. Um, but whenever he got to Santa Rosa and he was doing the yearling operation, I mean, I knew he was drinking a lot, uh, but and so we had talked about getting married, and we had a few little hiccups along the way that had happened in our relationship, but for the most part, we pretty much knew that that's what we wanted. Uh,
Did his drinking scare you after growing up with a alcoholic father?
you know, I'd like to say it did, but where I'm from, for
Part of the
for
deal.
for cowboys to sit around and drink a 30 pack, that's just normal. I mean, and honestly, like even growing up with my dad would go work in the shop and drink a 30 pack with his friends, and that's what everyone did. So I didn't really label my dad as being an alcoholic till later on in life, till when he actually started to get sober, and he is, I mean, he's not an alcoholic like he was today for sure. Um, but it's just the norm. Um,
Yeah, there's no flags because it's just part of the deal. It's
it
part of the
is.
culture.
It
Yeah.
is. I mean, in Clayton, there's nothing for. 2 hours around any direction, and that's what people do. I mean, there's
You work hard, and that's I think that's where it gets a little dicey, right? Is because the rebuttal is always like, well, I get up and go to work. I work hard. So we have this picture of like, if you have a alcohol problem, it means you're living under a bridge and have no house or job. That's the indicator that you have a drinking problem,
exactly,
is that
yeah,
you are a hobo. If you have
yeah,
a job and get up and work hard, it's like we take the tendencies of addiction and just throw them under the rug because it's like, no,
yeah,
he has a job and he works hard and he plays hard and it's part of the cowboy deal. Yeah,
exactly,
totally get it.
exactly, yeah. So I mean, going into it, uh, yeah, I just thought this is normal. This is what cowboys do. This is you live on a ranch, and you have to blow off steam somehow, and this is how they do it. Yeah.
So you guys talk about marriage, and at what point is he like, was there a lot of conversations leading up to it, or did he just surprise you, or how did the that go down?
I think it was always kind of, we talked about how, you know, once we did get engaged, then I would move in with him. So, I mean, there was talks for the most part about how this is an absolute, it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I actually had a friend tell me, I'm pretty sure he's having a ring built for you. So, there for the last 2 months before he actually asked me, it was like any moment it could happen. So I was always kind of on guard. Is
Yeah,
it going to
you're
happen
always
today?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, then he ended up proposing to me. I think like a day before my birthday, and we had been dating for 2 years. I think when he proposed to me,
How old were you at this point?
I was 23.
Oh yeah,
23. Yeah,
well, you had it figured out by then. I mean, 23,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, definitely. So, uh, not long after that, a couple months after that, I ended up just going ahead and moving in with him, um, because we were so close to we would be closer to where we were planning to have our wedding and things like that if I moved in with him. So I went ahead and moved into the ranch, or into the house that he was living on at the ranch he was at. So
Were you able to? So you weren't still working at the bank because it's a 2-hour drive, right?
well, actually, there was a branch in Santa Rosa, so
Oh,
I was able
perfect.
to just transfer branches. Yeah, yeah. And, and so I continued to work at the bank. Um, Lived there with him, and then about 9 months after we got engaged, we got married, and just shortly, I think a month after we were married, uh, he ended up quitting the job there in Santa Rosa, and we had 2 weeks to scramble and find somewhere else to go. So then
Life
started
of a cowboy.
then started the actual life of the cowboy, because I grew up on a ranch that was family owned. I didn't completely comprehend the cowboy lifestyle of going from ranch to ranch until meeting Tyler. That was all new to me.
When he left that ranch, did you guys move to a different town?
No, actually, we were able to find a job that was just north of Santa Rosa. It was about 45 miles north of Santa Rosa. So I was still able to commute back and forth to my job. And it was, when we pulled up, it was just like heaven on earth, especially for me, because it reminded me so much of my family ranch. And so
Oh, nice.
when we pulled up, I told Tyler, please just give me 20 years here. That's all I'm asking. If you can do 20 years here, I'll be okay with that. So, yeah,
And at this point, still in the honeymoon phase,
we were. We were.
like everything was great.
Everything was great. We were ranch rodeoing in the summertime, and I was helping him, do whatever we needed to do. And And yeah, everything was wonderful at the time. But around this time, where we moved was within a mile as a crow flies from a bar. So as soon as we moved to this ranch, things started to kind of change because he was in such close proximity um, to a bar and to other people that were influences around that were drinking heavily. Um, and I was at the bank and I was starting to kind of climb the ladder a little more there. So I was spending a lot more time, you know, after hours working. I was working on getting promoted to be a loan officer, and so he was kind of on free reign, you'll say. I guess I could say. So uh, yeah, things definitely started to change within the first year or two being there.
You just noticed that when you got home, he wouldn't be there, stuff like that.
Yeah, he wouldn't be there. If I tried to call him, wouldn't answer. Um, he started day
Did you have to
working.
drive? Did you have to drive by that bar to get home?
I did.
So it was obvious you would like see his truck
Hmm.
there, and
Hmm.
then try to call him, and he wouldn't answer.
Hmm. Yeah, or I'd just stop in, and he'd already be three sheets to the wind.
Hammered.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Um,
what would he say to you? Were you still like kind of like, oh, it's part of the deal? Like, hey, when you coming home? Do you want dinner?
yeah.
Like, how did you show up to him in that during that time?
Well, I sometimes I'd sit down and have a couple beers with him, and then go home and wait for him to come behind me eventually. So yeah, I mean, it was still kind of just this is what it is, you know,
Not a big deal.
not a big deal. Yeah, until he started day working a lot more because the ranch we were on, it was pretty. Once we got everything straight, it was pretty self-sufficient. Um, Whenever it wasn't branding or shipping time, uh, and so he started day working a lot more. I mean, he would travel 3, 4, 5 hours away to other ranches that his friends were on and be gone for a week at a time or whatever, and I'd stay there and take care of things. And uh, around that time is whenever our relationship really started to change. There was a lot of lies that started. Um, I'd ask him
Ar- Around drinking and stuff.
around drinking. Yep, yep. And like I'd ask him, where have you been? And he'd tell me, oh, I was over at so and so's house, whenever he'd really be somewhere else. Um, and I want to say a couple years into that, he ended up going to the hospital the first time for a bowel obstruction. Um, he had been drinking pretty heavily the night before, came in super late, and then got really, really sick the next day. So he ended up going to the hospital and was in there for a couple of days. We thought, I mean, at the time I had no idea what it was or that it would even be caused by drinking, anything like that. Um,
Right.
you know, and uh, so fast forward a couple of years, we started having people come and stay with us at the ranch.
Like his friends.
His friends, yes, which we always had people come and
Yeah.
stay during branding or shipping time or whatever, and then they end up staying for a week or two after and help with cleanup or whatever. But we started having people come and stay like months at a time. He would ask for someone to come stay, whatever, no big deal. He ended up inviting someone that we had just briefly known. We didn't know him super well, uh, but his wife had recently uh, kicked him out, and his kids. He was fixing to lose his kids, lose everything, basically. Um, I knew he was a heavy drinker. Tyler had told me that he thought he had gotten into some other things, and that's why they were threatening to take away his kids. And we were just trying to do a good deed and let the guy come live with us. And Tyler was teaching him his way of starting horses and things like that. And I was all for it. I thought this is great. We're doing a good deed here. We're helping
Yeah.
somebody else. And I mean this person was like he was Tyler's best friend, no doubt, but he was a really good friend to me too. And and after after he lived with us for a while, he seemed to got his life straight. I could tell that he had definitely kind of switched off any kind of drugs that he was on and definitely went fully to alcohol, and which was again normal. It's what people do, right? They just drink. It's fine. Better than
Yeah,
drugs.
he's got a lot going on.
Yeah. So uh he ended up getting back his family back together. They moved to a ranch nearby. Tyler was dairy working with them a lot, and I was still working at the bank, and I started noticing money disappearing really fast.
Like out of your shared bank account?
Out of our bank account, out of my purse. I'd have cash in my purse, it would disappear. Um,
Would you confront
I
him about it?
I would confront him, and he'd say, "Well, as far as my purse, he would say, I don't know what happened. You must have misplaced it." But as far as our bank account, he would say, "Well, I went to Tractor Supply and I got some stuff that we needed," or I ran out of gas and I had to get some gas, or I had to pay my tab at the bar, whatever. And so I just would kind of brush it off and okay, whatever. I'm sure they went out and
You didn't want to see it,
no, no, no.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was kind of
You
like
didn't
it was easier for me to just say, okay, whatever, than to argue with him. And it was part of my people pleasing and codependency is let's just keep him happy. If we just keep him happy, then I'll be happy. Um, and at the same time, we were also trying to get pregnant, and we were having trouble with that. We pretty much had been trying. Um, I don't know, a year into our marriage, we started trying, and so fast forward 4 or 5 years later, we still hadn't uh, had a baby, and I was really starting to kind of get unhappy with my job in town. It was really hard. I commuted on I-40 every day, and there was always a wreck or something, and um, I just I felt really unfulfilled at the time. I had went ahead and got my college degree in accounting, and I was promoted to loan officer, and I had everything I wanted, but I just wasn't happy. And especially with trying to conceive and everything, the stress of my job and then the commuting, I just knew that I was never going to be able to conceive. So I ended up resigning from the bank, and I had no idea what I was going to do. But I knew I could at least come home to the ranch and I could help Tyler. And especially about that time, because around that time is whenever things started to get neglected at home, um, because he was gone a whole lot more. And and then once I got home, I started realizing he's not drinking very much anymore. There's not all the empty cans that there used to be, but he's still
so
gone,
the
and he's still doing things. The money's still disappearing. Um, and it
that's interesting to me is that the flag wasn't that he was drinking, it was that he wasn't drinking.
right, yeah,
That's
yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Which
But like you said, the he's still gone all the time. There's no change in behavior. He's gone all the time, and the money is still disappearing. And now you've lost your income, which I would imagine was probably more significant than his income
it was,
with a good job.
it was.
So now the money thing is even a bigger stressor, probably, I would imagine.
Yes, for sure. Because when I left my job, I had it to where we were going to be okay. Um, I had really worked hard to make sure we were going to be okay and that we would be able to just live off of one income, but it was going to be tight. And so whenever he wasn't respecting that and he was still just blowing money, It was kind of like, whoa, 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 okay, hold on, we can't do this anymore. You have to slow down. But there was no control over it.
Because really, I think what I've learned in my journey with Mary is like it's not even about the money so much, it's the security of are we going to be okay? Am I going to be taken care of with the roof and the food and the essentials?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, that's scary when that starts disappearing.
exactly. Yes. And right around that time, he ended up going to day work for the same guy that had lived in our house. He had gotten a job at a ranch that was halfway across the state in Grants, New Mexico, and he was over there day working. And I get a phone call from this guy's wife telling me he's very sick, and he was living in the bunkhouse that week, and he was just so sick. And so I ended up driving out there to check on him and see what we needed to do because he couldn't drive home. And he had been gone for like 2 weeks and he really needed to get back to take care of the ranch. And I drove out there and he could barely even get up off the floor. And I just thought, this is so strange. You know, he must have some flu or something. So I load him in the car, I haul him to the hospital. And again, he had another bowel obstruction. And I had asked him, had you been drinking a bunch or anything? And he said, no, I haven't. But right as I went to load him in the car that day, he looked at his friend and he motioned to him and he got real close to him and he whispered something to him and it just kind of caught me funny, like, what was that about? Why couldn't you have said it in front of us? And so I take him to the hospital and it ended up being a bowel obstruction, but the nurses were really strange and I couldn't figure out why they were acting so strange towards me. And I thought, you know what, this is an interstate town. Maybe they're just used to a lot of druggies coming in and stuff, and they
Sure.
don't know who we are. And so, maybe they're just being real strange. And uh, he spent 3 or 4 days in the hospital there. And when we went to leave, the nurse came in to discharge him, and she was just checking him all over. And I noticed there was like these sores on his leg, and I thought, oh, that's strange. So I asked her, I said, is this what do you know what this is or anything? And she just like looked at it and just looked at me and walked out the door. And I always thought, well, that's so strange. And it never occurred to me why she was acting so strange. So, anyways, we ended up leaving the hospital. We got horses loaded, got all of stuff loaded, got him back to the ranch. And it was around that time that I ended up finding little baggies um, in his feet. And I was so naive to drugs and everything else that I had no idea what it was. I thought it was cocaine. I had no idea. Um, so I ended up approaching him, and he told me that it was THC crystalline. And if you Google it, it looks just like little crystals of something. And so I thought, okay, he's smoking weed of some kind, some something. And so that's really what I thought. I thought, okay, he's found, and he told me it doesn't smell like weed, and so people don't know, and so I believed him. I thought, okay, all right, so we have an issue, but it's not a big issue.
Sure.
Um, and that summer, I ended up having a surgery because we were kind of still on this fertility journey. So I ended up having a surgery, and they ended up putting me on some medication and stuff because I ended up having stage 2 endometriosis. And I had the surgery that summer. That fall, I ended up getting pregnant with our son Asher. And about the same exact time that I got pregnant with him was when I discovered some pipes. And I realized, okay, maybe this is not just THC stuff. This might be more. And so the beginning of my pregnancy was a little a little
Oh,
rocky. Um,
did you confront him about the pipes?
I would. I mean, I would confront him, and he would tell me it's nothing. It's nothing. It's just for this slime stuff. Either that, or he would get extremely angry to the point of where he
Hmm.
would start shaming me about things, and we'd get completely off topic, and it just would never go
Divert
anywhere.
it.
Yeah. Um, this friend was starting to come around a lot more. He ended up moving to a ranch closer, and I ended up going to the NFR for one of the trade shows to help my stepmom. And so I was gone for 2 or 3 weeks, and got back home, and I could just tell like something was not right at all. He definitely was not himself. Um, so, but I did mention to my stepmom that I thought there was something going on at the time. But I begged and I pleaded her not to tell my dad, uh, because I knew that if he knew, he would definitely make me do something about it. And I just wasn't at a
Yeah.
place where I could do anything about it because, you know, I was carrying this man's child now. How can I accuse him of something, so big and be wrong? Um, so I just kind of went through the motions throughout my pregnancy. He spent a lot of time in his bit and spur shop. He got to where he was really neglecting stuff on the ranch and just spending time in the spur shop, and I mean like days at a time without coming in the house. And I just I just went with it. I just let it happen because I just was not at a place where I could do anything that I thought I could do anything about it.
You probably felt super trapped too, especially with the pregnancy, not having your independence with your own job. Like,
Yes, yes, and it was. I felt a sense of responsibility of taking care of that ranch. Uh, those people were really good to us. So uh, these this friend of his wife and I became really close during my pregnancy, and we were there at their place a lot. They were at our place a lot. Um, right about this time, COVID started happening, and so everyone was isolated. I didn't, I couldn't even have a baby shower or anything like that. Our families weren't coming around because everyone was so scared. And so these people were the only people we really had at the time. And
did you and her ever talk about any of this?
we talked about it a lot. Uh, not what was going on, but her husband's past drug use. We talked about a lot. Actually, whenever they lived at the ranch where he ended up going to the hospital, um, she told me that she had found some baggies when she was cleaning the bunkhouse, but she told me she was pretty sure it was one of the other guys.
Mm.
And so it never tipped me off at that time. But we had talked a lot about it. I mean, we were extremely close with these people. Uh, it's hard to explain now, but they actually were the people that brought me closer to my faith, um, because they were in a way it's like an absolute contradiction that they were such good Christians in certain aspects of their life, and this guy actually was the person that baptized Tyler and I. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy to say that the person that introduced my husband to drugs was also the person that introduced us to Jesus.
Wow.
But it's true.
That's that's nuts.
It is. It is.
Oh, I get it. We used to get a case of beer and have Bible studies, like, and get drunk and be like these great theologians, and it's such a weird spot for you to have been in, because what do you do with that?
Well, and especially for me, not having any kind of relationship with God before, and you know, I can remember the day they were going to baptize Tyler, and it was like I just felt this sense of like, well, I need to be baptized too. Like I need to do it too because I feel like I don't want to get left behind. Like I want to feel that love too. I want to do this. I want to go down this journey with him. And so a couple days later, during I think it was like our branding or something like that, um, they ended up baptizing me as well. And it's been a hard thing for me to go through in my mind later on because it's like, man, what kind of like I almost feel shame around it. Like, how can I have let these people lead me astray in one part of my life, but then they also brought me something that brings me such joy in life. Like it's so twisted in a way, but I think that's where like the redemption comes in is that you can be going like the same person can influence you to do something so bad, but at the same time, like God's gonna come and step in and be like, wait, don't hold on. There's still good here. There's
Oh,
still
come
something
on.
good that's gonna happen, you know? So it's kind of like almost like he was armoring us for what was to come. But
Yeah,
he was using the same people in that bad situation, but also armoring us with what they had to offer too.
it's crazy.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, we ended up right before I gave birth to Asher. I confronted both Kurt and Pam of our friends, and I told them that I thought Tyler was using, and that I didn't know what to do about it. And she told me, "Don't worry, I'll have him come up and talk to him, and we've got this handled. Don't worry." And I can remember they came to our house. She and I were sitting on the porch. I was probably 7 or 8 months pregnant. And I remember seeing Tyler and this guy drive out of our house, drive out of the driveway, and they were going to go have a talk. And later, I find out that they went to go meet a drug dealer. So, yeah. Um, so after I had Asher, um, that's when it all changed to me because it wasn't just me. I didn't just have to protect him. And I knew that that child deserved better. Uh, and things with Tyler and I, they got really rough, really rough, because I could tell he was also having the same thoughts, but couldn't do anything about it. And so he was really having a hard time, but he was completely sick. Um, he was there, but he wasn't there. And I started trying to hint around to his parents that I thought something was going on. Um, they came down from Colorado to see us, and I tried really hard to get them to see what was going on without having to tell them because I was so afraid that if I told them what was going on, they wouldn't believe me because it was so far from what their son was that I just didn't think they would believe me. And I made lots of hints. I tried to explain some things. Um, I just remember they came in and they asked me, why does Tyler say there's only 24 cents in your bank account?
Like it was your fault.
Well, not, but they were just like, so they didn't understand, like, why didn't we have any money? Why, what was going on? And what, what, what they didn't know was that I was having to keep our bank account completely drained so that, because I thought if there's no money there, he won't be able to buy anything. But the truth is that he would just go figure something else out, or he would just run up the tab. But I thought I was trying to control that situation. Um, but I could not work up the courage to tell them that I thought there was something bigger going on. And then they left, and a couple weeks went by, and we had 200 calves that needed to go to the sale, needed to be weaned, go to the sale. There was just so many things that were just piling up around the place, and I just knew there was no way we could get it done, or that he could get it done in the state he was in. And not only that, but him and I's relationship was just non-existent. He spent most of the time at the barn, and I was inside the house with the baby. So I decided to make a phone call and call his mom and tell her that I was pretty sure it was meth. And she said, I'll be in the car and I'll be right there.
So the opposite of what you thought.
Yeah, yeah. And
Sure.
she jumped in the car and she immediately started trying to call rehabs, figure something out, somewhere for him to go.
Like during the day, would you go out into the his shop where he was at? And could you visibly like tell he was high?
I every day I went out and I fed dogs and horses. I'd strap Asher in the stroller and we would go out to the barn and we'd take care of everything, make sure everything had water, because I didn't know that he he was doing anything to make sure everything was taken care of. So and we'd stop by the shop, and I could not. I had no idea. I had no idea when he was or wasn't. Well, I'll take that back. The only time I knew for sure he wasn't high was when he was in the house sleeping. And
Which was probably sporadic.
it was. And then when he would sleep for days, and you couldn't wake him.
Dang. How scary to be, again, I don't know a better word than trapped. Like, and you got this baby that's supposed to be something you guys have worked so long at trying to have happen. And when he's in that state, he can't be a dad at all.
Yeah, yeah.
So what happened when Tyler's mom got there?
He was completely in a state of shock. He had
Blind?
no idea. He was like,
He was
"Why is my?"
blindsided.
Yeah, he saw her drive in, and he was like, "Why is my mother here?" Um, so she came in. We sat down. We had somewhat of an intervention, and that was the first time that he had ever actually admitted that it was meth. It took several hours, but he finally admitted that it was meth. And he was angry. He was angry at me for calling his mom. He was angry that he was going to have to go to rehab. He was angry that he didn't know what was going to happen with his job. Um, yeah, there was a lot of anger that night and that morning.
How were you scared?
I was terrified.
that he would just pull up stakes and leave and you'd never hear from him again, or
I was afraid that he would do something
to you?
to harm us, to harm him, because he was not in his right mind,
Is
frame of mind
yeah.
at all. He'd get explosively angry, and so that was part of the reason I think it took me so long to finally do something, was because also it was, I'm here on this ranch by myself, and the Tyler I know, the sober Tyler, I know he would never harm a fly, but the Tyler on meth, I can't predict what he's gonna do.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you have this job that you're filling in for and a brand new mom and making sure that the animals are fed and watered. Like, yeah, it's a very unpredictable scenario.
Yeah,
When after the 2 hour like intervention, at what point did that conversation end? Did he get up and storm out, or was there like a plan in place, or how was he responding to all that? Besides, you said he was angry, but
I had made sure that I took all the keys out of the vehicles and things so that if he did try to leave, he couldn't. Um, but he kind of just he got angry, he got mad. He went out to a shop for a while, and then he came back and he was ready to go. He was still mad,
like,
but he was ready to go
but
to
like
rehab.
he was ready to get in the car that day.
Yeah, they ended up staying the night and leaving the next morning. Which actually, I have to say, today actually it's so crazy because today marks 4 years since he got in the car and left for rehab.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
How fitting.
right.
Hmm.
So yeah, he did get in the car the next morning and they left for Sal, Oklahoma.
Was
Which
he just like, we'll see you in a couple months or however long? How was he towards you that night and that next morning?
he hardly spoke to me that night.
Yeah.
Um, and I could tell he was really having a hard time leaving Asher.
Hmm.
And
Did that give you hope?
it did. It did. I actually have a picture of him sitting on the floor with him from that night
That
because I took that picture not knowing if there would ever be that opportunity again. And I wanted that for our son and for me, just one last, just in case, because there was so many unknowns in that moment.
hmm.
But
When when he pulled out of the driveway, his mom took him.
she did.
Did you have any sense of relief, or were you just terrified, or what was that day like 4 years ago today?
It was relief, but at the same time, I was terrified of what I had to do going forward and what was going to happen because I knew he could never come back there. We had his
Did you have
drug
to
addict.
call the did you have to call the ranch owners?
I did.
Oh my gosh. So all everything got dumped in your lap
Yes.
because
Yes.
the animals still need fed
Yes.
and you have a baby.
We had 12 working dogs, 20 horses, saddle horses on the place, and a little over 400 head of cattle on the place at the time. And
Wow.
yeah, yeah. And
So that had to feel overwhelming on top of all the other emotions. What was that? At what point did you call the ranch owners?
The day he left, I ended up calling her, telling her what was going on. Um, Not only that, he had recently wrecked the feed pickup. It was still, it still would operate, but he had just recently also done that. So I had a lot I had to tell her. Um,
How was that? How did she receive all of this? Because she probably
uh,
had no idea, right? They had no idea.
no, no. She knew that he used to drink, and she knew that things were a little rough around there, but I don't think she had any idea. Um, we had 200 calves contracted with Superior Livestock that had to be marketed within the next 2 months too. And
Jeez.
so she was panicked, she was in disbelief, and they were also heartbroken because we were like family to them, and they were like
Mm.
family to us. Um,
Did she
but
have compassion towards you?
oh, definitely, definitely, yeah, yeah. She allowed me to stay there for 2 months and draw his paycheck and do his job.
Wow. By
Yeah,
yourself.
by myself. Well, I say by myself, but I had an amazing group of people to help me. Um, People in the community, some of our friends. My mom
Rallied.
came. Yeah, my mom came and stayed, but she had been there on and off um, for the last year or so. She would come and stay, and she knew something was up too. But I think she was trying to let me handle it in my own time. Uh, so yeah,
Dur- During those 2 months, so basically the ranch owner said until he gets out, you have a place to stay.
yeah, and she never said he can't come back. She never said those words.
You knew.
That was me. Yeah, I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. And I wasn't even gonna give her the opportunity to say yes or no because I knew we couldn't stay. And it was heartbreaking because Tyler did do an amazing job at that ranch. He built the cattle herd back up. He did a lot of things. He built a lot of fence and pens, and I mean anyone that knows
Oh,
knows him knows he is extremely handy, and he's good at anything he puts his hands on. And it's a shame that everything he did there, it just took took one thing to make it all crumble down.
at any point were you staying with him dependent on him getting sober?
So I never actually told him, you have to go to rehab or else, you know, we're done or you're not coming back or anything. I never really said those words to him. But after his mom dropped him off at rehab, um, she did call me and she said, "We need to know, what are you going to decide to do? Are you going to stay with him or not?" And I had no idea. I had no answer. None. I at the time I just knew I just had to get through the next couple of months and finish the job because I wasn't going to leave those people with the mess. And I knew that Asher and I were going to be okay, but there was no way I could know until Tyler decided if he was going to be able to stay clean or not.
Did you have any communication with him while he was in rehab?
So he did get a phone call a night. Um, so we would get to talk at least once a day usually, which was good because I needed to be able to communicate with him because I I may know how to ride a horse and I may have worked with him the last 7 years on that ranch, but there was things I had no idea how to do or what
Sure.
we were doing.
or where things were at or where, yeah.
Yeah.
Did he
And
talk to you? How long after he checked in did he talk to you immediately? Or was there a few days where you didn't hear from him?
there was a few days where I did not. Um, but once he got there, he apologized for being angry about being there. I mean, he, I could just hear something had already changed in his voice. And I don't know if it was just because he had clearer eyes and thoughts, but there was definitely a change in him already. And he was extremely apologetic for everything.
And those apologies landed with you on your heart?
Somewhat, I think it was just more the acknowledgement is what meant a lot to me because he had gaslighted me so much over those 2 years that I thought I was crazy a lot of the time.
Sure. Yeah, that
Um,
there in that addiction, I know this firsthand, obviously, the manipulation that goes along with the addiction is off the charts
yeah,
of the diverting and I know that I would like make try to spin everything for it to be Mary's fault,
mhm,
you know? And
mhm,
so that's a pretty deep hole that I know I dug, and I would imagine that Tyler dug with you, just as far as having equity and access to your heart, because at some point walls start going up, right? Of
yeah,
self-protection,
yeah,
because you've been betrayed. And at some level, even subconsciously in that moment, it's like, well, I don't really trust women. And now all the men in my life have done some extreme damage also. So that's hard to come back from, I would imagine.
yes, yes. But what's crazy is that God really, he was really looking out for me and Tyler both, I guess. But he gave me those 2 months at that ranch to build back up some of what had been torn down. Because not only did I have some amazing people step in and help me, but just to be able to spend that time alone um, and process and just clear my head and then have a sense of accomplishment of I can I just did something that you know I never thought I could. I got on a horse, 2 months postpartum and went and shipped some calves and led a drive and stuff that I never would have had the opportunity to do,
It's awesome.
but it was so healing
Yeah. Hmm.
because it gave me the sense of empowerment of, you know what, no matter what happens after this, I'm going to be okay. If I can
With or
accomplish this,
without. Yeah.
yeah, if I can accomplish this, I think I'll be okay.
That's really powerful because I think so many times in this spot, women are going through all those emotions and like probably doubt of like, well, if I would have done this different, or if I would have been a better wife, or I like it's so the opposite of empowering, right? Plus all the manipulation that comes along with being with an addict to have that 2 months to like prove to yourself, no matter what, me and my son are going to be fine because I have done things that I didn't know I was capable of doing. And it kind of showed you this pattern of what you're capable of, even after all these hard things you've been through relationally. That had to feel very empowering to just know, to have some sense of peace of like, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah,
Because I can do super hard things that I didn't know I was capable of.
exactly. Yes. Yeah, because I went through all the emotions through his addiction of, is it me? Why am I not enough? You know, why is it that I can stand here screaming at you and you still you don't you still put it above me? Why why am I not enough? And then it was the, okay, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe this isn't really happening. Maybe I'm making all this up because of all of my past trauma. I want to create a situation. Maybe that's me. Maybe it's just me.
Mm.
And then to the victim mode of, how can this be happening to me, and what have I done wrong? And I went through all of it, and then finally to step outside of that and see that there's hope, whether that means that it's with Tyler or without him. There was hope.
Yeah, hope's a very powerful thing.
Yeah.
And towards the end of his time there, you'd seen a change early on, but were the conversations changing besides him just apologizing? And was there like some softening happening inside of you towards him?
There was. um
Let me rephrase it. At some point in this, was there a specific time when you're like, I think this could work. I think our family is going to make it.
there was. um I can remember him saying things to me like, you know going forward, we've really got to focus on our love of God, and we've got to, um, like, as a family, I want us to really work on this together. He would say things like that to me, and I remember I would catch my breath and be like, as a family, okay, yeah, as a family. And I would have to sit, and
Mm,
it would take me a minute to be like, is that what I want? I don't know. Um, but probably by 2 or 3 weeks in of him being at rehab, I knew for sure that he was going to be okay, and that even if he relapsed, that the Tyler I knew before, he was coming back,
mm.
but even better. um, I could just, I could definitely see a change, and it was like he was starting to recognize his emotions that he hadn't before. Um, yeah, and we had talked some about what was going to happen after. But when he got out of rehab, I actually still had a month left at the ranch. So he couldn't come back to the ranch. So we had talked about, you can't come
Was
here.
that your boundary? That was your boundary that you set?
Yes, yes,
And he accepted that?
he did. I don't think he was happy about it, but he did accept it. And I think that's probably the first time in my life that I've actually set a boundary like that with someone.
And stood up for yourself.
Yeah,
Good for you. How good did that feel?
really good, but really scary at the same time.
Well, yeah, because the fear is I'm going to set this boundary, and it's either two things are going to happen. It's not going to be respected or taken serious, or they're going to leave. They're going to be like, that's fine, you can have your boundary, but I'm out, right?
Yes. Yes. Because that's,
So it's risky. It's super risky to set a healthy boundary.
yes. And with already feeling abandoned throughout my childhood, being abandoned again after I just went through all of this with you, that was really scary. So, but he did respect it. He made plans to go to his parents' house in Colorado while I was finishing everything up, which, I mean, not only for him, I'm sure he felt rejected, but not only that, like it was a hit to his ego as well. Like I have to
Oh,
go,
yeah, it's
I have to
pride
go sit up here and sit in
on
my
my
parents'
wife.
house while my wife is down here doing my job, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So there was, I could definitely feel he was having a hard time with that. Um, but he did it, and we continued to
Did you
talk.
see him? Did you see him in between rehab and him moving back to Colorado?
So I went with his mom to pick him up from rehab, um, and they put on they do like sort of like a graduation
Like,
for
yeah,
them.
ceremony.
Yes, and so we sat through that, and I was absolutely blown away because the person that
In
sat
what way?
there, that just how open he was. He was crying. He was, I mean, and he didn't cry before. He was crying. He was saying things to me that I just never thought in a million years that he would take accountability for the things that he was. Um, and so we ended up driving back to Amarillo that night, stayed the night, and then the next morning we got up and went back to the ranch. And he was able to get some things that he needed, and then they left for Colorado after that.
Wow, that had to be such a weird space to be in, of like so filled with hope, and like not only am I getting my husband back, but this version of him that I didn't even know I longed for in a man, because I didn't know it was possible. And
Exactly.
we get to start over, but not yet. He's got to leave, and I'm going to be here. Like, wow, that's a crazy mixed bag of emotions, I'm sure.
It really was. And again, it was almost like a relief when he left, too, though, because it was like, okay, now we have 30 more days for you to prove to me that you can do this.
Yeah,
So,
create some more safety.
yeah, you go do this, I'm going to do this, and you prove to me that we're going to be okay.
Yeah, outside of the walls of rehab, like that's great. You made it through that, but is it for real? What a
Yes,
perfect scenario.
yes, yes. So, it wasn't, though, because I finished everything up, and in those 30 days, I had to decide where are we going and what are we going to do? Because we knew that anywhere in this area he could not stay in. He couldn't be. I mean, at the time, I was still full of fear of his drug dealer just lives 5 miles from us, and I just didn't want a chance that he would have any proximity to her at all. So I decided to purchase a fifth will, and I was going to move it to Amarillo because my mom was there, my sister was there, and at least I would have a safety net. That if this fell through, at least I still
You were
had
okay.
a support group. And he was welcome to come with us or not. So that was the hill I stood on. While he was in Colorado, he was making different plans of his parents had offered for us to come up there and he could work under his dad and just every fiber of my being said, no, I can't do that because I need him to prove to me that he can come and be in my safety net and I don't have to be in his. Like, I don't want to feel helpless again. So, there was a lot of conflict in that time because he was angry that I wasn't he was, I think, maybe not angry, but maybe afraid because here we're moving to somewhere where he's going to either have to day work or work at a feedlot.
Yeah, get
And
a regular job.
yeah, and it's not going to be easy. And especially now he's in recovery and he needs to be going to meetings, he needs to be doing things to help continue his recovery. And here he is being thrown into a whole uncomfortable situation for him. But he, after a few days, I convinced him, and he decided that he was going to come with us.
It showed you some humility.
Yes, yes, yes. And so he ended up day working, um, got a job with Smith Ranches just right outside of Amarillo, and a couple months into day working with them, they offered him a job and a house, and it was just right outside of Amarillo, not far, at the LS Ranch at the headquarters. And I decided, I feel like he's doing really well, and I'm not going to get rid of the fifth wheel yet, but we're gonna go ahead and go. We'll move out there with it. And we moved out there on New Year's Day of 2021, and we stayed there for 4 months. And that's where uh, I realized that he was healed from the addiction, but there was still so much work. Um,
Yeah, the getting sober is the beginning of the journey, not the end.
yes, yes, exactly. And that it was just the beginning. And we hopped around several different places after that. Um, and our marriage, it struggled a little because here I have this new person with new feelings. And
And a lot of them.
yeah, and I'm still stuck in this codependency state of, I just want you to be happy. As long as Tyler's happy and he's sober, everything's okay. We don't want to rock the boat too much and drive him to want to go use again. So I was trying to suppress any emotions I had just to appease him.
Again, craving stability and safety
Yeah,
at any cost,
yeah,
especially your own.
yeah. And then you add on top of it that I'm still feeling a bit of shame because what is the outside world going to perceive me as, being the wife that stayed,
Mm,
you know?
interesting.
Um, because there was a lot of people that told me to go, don't stick around. The chances are pretty low
Yeah.
that he's ever going to fully recover. The chances are high that he's going to relapse. And do you really want to put your kid through that? But I think that's where my childhood kind of saved me in a way, because I did not want what I went through for my child. And so I think that gave me the will to want to work on it and make it better instead of just taking the easy road out, which I don't want to call it easy because that's not ever easy. But I knew that even if I left, the things that we were having trouble on, I would have it with another person because I was never healed from my problems. Tyler got to go and have his 30 days and feel this redeeming love of God. But here I am still sitting here, the same
Mm.
person.
That's interesting. That's a very good point. And I think that it's something common that I see, especially in Wild Courage, is the guys go on this journey and get all these breakthroughs. And I've seen it happen where the wives are like, well, what about me? When do I get it? Because guys are investing in their work, time, money, resources to go get help and get better. And the wives are like, I don't have that luxury. I've got kids to take care of. I have a job. I'm still like have to keep up my end of all the responsibilities of a wife and a mother and the household. And I do see women get left behind in this journey sometimes.
Yeah,
And that's probably a weird thing to know what to do with. Because I don't think that it's always invitation that the message the wives get of the husband creating space and doing some extra duty to have their wives like, it's your turn.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because, when we met in Elko, I remember sitting at the Star and you looked me dead in the eyes and you said, I want you to know that you're seen. And you just spoke such words of kindness and you said, this is for you too. And so I find it really cool that it's come full circle, that now it is. And not only that, but it has what Wild Courage has given Tyler has also given me so much, just from what the things it has done for him. I mean, it's poured over into our family, so that's really cool.
Good.
Yeah,
That's the point of it.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, going back to my healing, we definitely had some really rocky times because I felt left behind, and I felt like, yes, God's done some really cool things for us, but I still felt not enough. Um, I still had trouble understanding why a lot of the things happened that happened. Um, and just the shame of the people, from letting those people into our lives. And I was still angry.
Yeah, that's a lot of unprocessed pain of when we don't have the tools to go with the conflicting emotions, right? Of like, on one hand, I can't believe how great, how much better my life is. This is where I think we tend to sweep things under the rug, right? Because things were so bad for so long. Now there's light and there's hope. And on one hand, things are so much better. Like you alluded to, like, who's this man? He's not even the same guy I married for better reasons.
Yeah,
But at the exact same time, the other side of the coin, the conflicting emotion part is what about me? When do I get to experience my turn in this? And it's tricky because you have all the experience of your childhood on top of your marriage and the other relationship that did a lot of damage. And so it leaves us like trying to sort through all these different things. And at the same time, especially in Christian culture, of being grateful. Like, oh, I just need to be grateful. Like, oh, we're so blessed, which is true. But that's where I think, again, we sweep things under the rug is because it's so much better. I have this man back. We have our bumps in the road, but he's sober and he's doing great. I should keep my mouth shut and just be grateful and be the good little Christian wife that checks the boxes and is super grateful that I have this husband and we have a family, and I guess I should get over it.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Just continue
And
to
so part of
stuff
it
it
feels,
down.
yeah, part of it feels like, yeah, this is great, but I'm abandoning my own soul in this process of like, he's better now. Get over it. And I know Mary's dealt with that. Like, yeah, but what about all the pain he caused me before that? The difference between forgiving and forgetting, right?
Yeah.
Is like, how do you do that? And we're not supposed to.
Yeah. 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 And that's been my journey ever since he's gotten sober, is trying to heal that part of me. And really, for me, being okay with whatever happens and knowing that that's not a reflection of me. That what happened isn't a reflection of me.
Well, and that's the beginning when you start pulling on that very long thread of codependency.
Yeah.
That's sometimes where it can start.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be okay even if they're not okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like we say all the time, like you never arrive, right? On the journey of one's own self journey, but also the journey of marriage. And it comes in strides and waves, right? Of like healing and better, and then plateaus, and then valleys. But the beautiful part is when you're with somebody that can where you can each let each other go on the journey and then come back together and fight for your marriage and fight for your family and fight for your spouse, but give each other space. And I would say the most important key ingredient to that is grace. Mary and I
Absolutely.
went to dinner with some friends the other night, and we always have these deep conversations, and it was like, how are you guys doing? It's like, well, we're doing great. We really like each other, and we're figuring some things out, but we just have grace for each other. And it's such an important ingredient in going on this journey, is having that grace for each other when you're going through things and
Yeah.
letting each other experience what you need to feel and go through without trying to fix each other.
Yeah.
Which is really tricky when you're steeped in codependency like you and I is to let people go.
Yeah. Yeah. And that,
And then to have the grace for yourself to let yourself go in your situation, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, I remember one particular time we were leaving a ranch, um, in his recovery. And I remember just sitting on the floor bawling because once again, we were leaving and I didn't know what the next place was going to bring. And what if it wasn't going to be a good situation? What if he started feeling unhealthy again and using again. And I just remember feeling like I had no control at all. And then it just dawned on me of, you know what? That's the problem. It's not in your control. You're trying to control him. You're trying to control the situation. And you've got to let go. You've just got to let happen what's going to happen and just worry about you. And that's all you can do. Because there was no changing the situation. It was what it was.
Well, that's where faith starts to come in, right?
Yes.
In that letting go process,
Yeah.
because we don't have control over anything. Hell, half the time don't feel like I have control over myself.
Right.
Still.
Yeah. 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 And that's um so in at some point we ended up moving to Texas, uh, and working for T-Cross Ranches again. And uh, they moved their horse training facility down here, and so that's what Tyler's doing now. And being here has really given me the opportunity to, you know, renew my faith and really work on myself. And yeah, it's our marriage has just completely changed in the last 2 years. And
Even from a distance from, obviously not in your guys' lives geographically, but Tyler and I have become very close. And just in speaking with him and spending time with you guys together, you can't fake it with me. Like it's my superpower to see when couples aren't doing good because I know what it looks like so well.
mhm,
Because we were that couple for so long that would show up to church and Bible studies and small groups and put the plastic fake smiles on. And so I know what that looks like.
yeah,
Like you cannot fake me out when it comes to how a marriage is doing. Like I'm so sensitive to it because I know all the little tricks and games of keeping up the appearances. And my biggest takeaway of my time when I spent with you guys last winter was how authentic your marriage was and the peace that I felt when I was in your home. And again, I know that's not perfect, but you guys are like, I feel like equally yoked in the journey and in doing the work and in laying down and surrendering to God the things that you don't have control over. And I just felt that when I was with you guys was just overwhelming, the peace that was between you guys. And it's really a testament to the work that you've both done and are doing continually. Because again, we don't arrive at it ever. It's
yeah,
never like, oh, we got all the tools and the pieces and now our marriage is perfect, because that'll never be the case.
exactly. Yeah,
But I just feel like you guys do have a lot of grace for each other.
yeah. And it's taken a long time to get there, but it's better. I mean, there's times we'll catch ourselves having a conversation that normally would have caused an argument and for us to not talk to each other for days. And we can talk it out and be able to articulate our emotions to each other without having to raise our voices. And it's like we'll finish the conversation and we'll be like, man, that was really cool. Didn't that feel good?
That's the fruit. Like I say the same thing all the time. Mary and I, like the arguments that we would have that would derail us for 3 months at a time, we now can have in 5 minutes and nobody raises their voices, to your point. And I remember the first time that happened and I was just like, oh, this is actually working. There's actually fruit to all this work we've done and counseling and courses and there's actual fruit and tools to navigate it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that life circumstances aren't going to show up, because they do. And we just know how to deal with things better now. It's
Yeah.
how we're showing up to the life, not how life's showing up to us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's pretty amazing how God's redemptive touches, because I look at my story and your guys' story and Mary and I's story, and I'm like, it's fascinating to me how the broken pieces of us pre-marriage are some of the things that actually gave us the strength to endure it. And I'm with you. I didn't want to give up on my marriage, even when Mary said, look, this thing is over. I hate you, and we're never getting back together. Everyone in my camp was the same and was telling her, you guys tried. It's done. Like, move on. And that broken piece in me of going through what I went through as a child and what you went through as a child gave me the staying power to be like, no, I don't want my kids to experience what I went through. I don't want that for them. So I'm not going to give up.
Exactly.
I'm not going to quit. And so it's like just so cool how those things can help us get through hard things till we can get help and get healthy in those broken areas. But it is fascinating to me how that works.
Yeah, because it's almost like because of my past trauma, I want the generations for me to be better. But because I experienced that, that's what's going to give you the want to and the stamina to make sure that those generations never have to go through that.
Yeah, exactly. Um, what would you say to the woman who is in the very early stages of what you've been through, as far as like recognizing my husband is an addict and I feel scared, I feel trapped, and I feel hopeless and there's no way out? What would you say to that gal?
Well, the first thing might sound a little harsh, but you're never going to fix it. It's not, it's, you can't fix it, but it is going to be okay no matter what. And that you are enough and you are loved. And, you know, my story, it's not the common one. More often than not, it's somebody has to walk away. And that's okay if you have to walk away. I was very fortunate that I was able to put up boundaries and they were respected. And God blessed me that He gave me back my husband. But that's not always the case. And that even if someone has to walk away, life will go on and you will be loved. And, God's got a plan. It doesn't end with addiction. There's always more than just that.
That's beautiful. Well, I'm just really proud of you and so grateful that you and your amazing family are in my life. And not only are you a strong, independent, healed, and in the healing process woman, but you're also a businesswoman and an entrepreneur. And I love that part of God's redemptive purpose for our life is He gives us back the things that we lost forever. And listening to your story about like college and all that was lost or stolen from you or given up, like is full circle. like those dreams and desires that you had as that young girl, young woman, now you get to pursue them in a very healthy way. And as far as I can tell, you have a very supportive husband in you chasing down your dreams outside of being a wife and a mother. And I just think it's inspiring and a very powerful part of your redemption story is that often in life when we're going through hard seasons, we think that we're going to be stuck in that forever. And it's just not the truth. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but we weaned our calves this week. So I got, we're fence weaning them. So we got these, and every morning I go out to feed these calves. I'm just reminded of what I thought I would never have, and that all my dreams were going to be gone and I'd be stuck at some job I hated because I'd made a mess out of my life. It doesn't have to be the narrative.
Not at all.
And that life is seasonal, and there are seasons of digging in and doing the hard things and taking care of yourself and, for you, your son. But things do change, things do get better. And I'm reminded of that with these bawling cows and calves I got out here, that I never thought I would be living this dream. I never thought I would have this life. And it sometimes takes a decade,
That's so true.
but it's possible. But it's possible.
It is.
So, how can people find you and your website, and give me just a little 100,000 foot view of what you're up to now with your company?
You bet. So I had what a company called the Thrifty Cowhand, and just in the last year, I've changed the name to Cowhand Co. And it is Western clothing with the working cowboy in mind. And so I carry branded denim jeans that are made in America by my dear friend Kelly Martin. And you can find our website at www.cowhandco.com. We also have pearl snaps and all kinds of goodies. You just never know what I'll come up with on there. I travel around to ranch rodeos and some trade shows every once in a while. Yeah, and I also do some social media content creation and stuff, but that's just kind of low key for right now.
Are you doing all of T Cross's stuff?
I do. Yes. Yes, I
Yeah,
do there.
which is amazing. I just saw Stephanie's husband Tyler's at the Snapple Bit Futurity right now, and I just saw some videos of him showing, and you did those videos?
I did. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Well, you're amazing at that. Good
Well,
job.
thank you.
Those are cool.
I don't have the high quality camera or anything like that. It's just kind of we work with
I
what
think
we
it
have,
looks
but
well. These stinking iPhones now. It's like they do such a good job that.
right. Yeah.
But anyway, well,
Yeah.
look, I think you're amazing,
Thank you.
and you're a blessing to everyone that gets the honor to know you and be around you. And keep going, keep going.
Well,
You and Tyler are showing Asher something that neither one of you got to be modeled to you. And like I always say, this is how we change the world. This is how we change the planet, is doing better, and our our ceiling being our children's floors, and you guys are such the example of that. So
well,
keep
thank
going,
you,
keep
Jeremy.
trucking,
Yeah,
and I look.
I'm so grateful
Go
to
ahead.
you and to Wild Courage and everything you're doing. It's been a blessing in our lives, and I know many others, and more to come.
Yeah, and also Tyler hosts a Wild Courage Fire at your guys' barn. So you can check all that out on our website. The Wild Courage website has we just updated our fire map. So if you're interested in catching fire in your area, I think we have 20 fires now, from Texas to Canada and California to the deep south. You can
Awesome.
go under events and check out the fire map to see a fire near you. But Stephanie, seriously, thank you so much. I
Thank
love your
you,
heart,
Jeremy.
and I love your family, and you're a dear friend to me, and we just
Thank
love
you.
you and think the world of you. So
Love you
thank you
too.
so much for trusting me to come on here and share your story.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thanks guys. Adios.